Fighting Blindness Canada's Viewpoint is a virtual education series that brings you the latest in vision research presented by health experts from across Canada. The webinar you're about to watch is a recording. To learn more about the research we fund and upcoming webinars and events, please visit our website at fightingblindness.ca. This Viewpoint webinar is proudly presented by Bayer and supported by Novartis, Allergan, Janssen, Biogen, AGTC, MeiraGTx, and the SickKids Foundation. We'd also like to thank Accessible Media Inc., our national accessibility partner. Everyone should download the AMI app, which is a fabulous resource, and you can watch excellent programming, including previous Fighting Blindness Canada events. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this webinar and share your thoughts with us in the comment section below.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Morgan, for having me and asking me to do this talk on the various apps that are available for individuals living with vision loss and blindness. As Morgan mentioned, I'm known for going beyond the traditional when it comes to helping people with vision loss see again. And we usually talk about the traditional as being glasses and magnifiers. Well, there's other solutions as well, and I'm really big on the advancements in technology. And I was able to listen to the webinar that was just recently hosted with Dr. Serena Friesen and Dr. Michael Nelson, and they talked about some of the more traditional vision aids that are available. And a few people had asked about devices like the eSight eyewear, as well as the Orcam device. And this is newer technology that is available for people with vision loss and blindness to possibly reach some of their vision goals. Now, being in Canada, we find that there's just not a lot of resources in terms of someone being able to access all of these various aids. I'm located in Toronto, so individuals who live closer to Toronto are able to come and try these aids out to see if they can help. So, as I said, there's more limitation in terms of how easily accessible these great, amazing aids are. And the other part to always mention is that there's always a cost involved where some people just may not be able to afford the cost with these newer devices that can make life-changing differences. Now, I get excited because when we talk about assistive technology and the world of smartphones and tablets, they have been the biggest revolutionary invention for the visually impaired and blind since Braille. And last year, Braille celebrated its 200th year anniversary. And when the smartphone first came out in 2007, there was actually a huge uproar in the visually impaired and blind community because the device was not something that was tactile. And I was like, how can this be accessible for us? And then word got to spread that there's all these great built-in features that were a part of the device. And you know, the first iPhone came out in 2007, in April 2007. So we've only been living with these aids now for 13 years, or this kind of technology. And it really has been revolutionary. So many people are walking around with a smartphone, or they might be using an iPad or a tablet. And back in 1991 in the IBM training manual, it was quoted that for people without disabilities, technology makes things easier. For people with disabilities, technology makes things possible. And so one of the reasons that the smartphone has been considered really revolutionary is that it has this voice over technology. That's what you'd find it on an Apple phone. On an Android-based one, it's called TalkBack. So we have this voice commanding system where it can read back to the user. Someone who's completely blind can definitely use a smartphone and navigate through and get technology or information easily accessible to them. So when we talk about the world of apps, it can be overwhelming. And that's because as of earlier this year, it was estimated that 2.56 million apps are available on Android phones, and 1.85 million are available for Apple-based phones. And over 500,000 of these apps are accessible to those who are visually impaired and blind. So I'm only going to be tapping into a few apps of various categories today because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of apps. So if you are a user and there's an app that you find has made really a life-changing difference, especially for everyday tasks, And I didn't mention it. I'm more than happy for you to share with me, and I'll give you my email address at the end of the presentation, so that way I can actually be aware of it. And like I said, I'm only going to be able to tap into just some of the apps that are available for the millions of visually impaired and blind individuals. So the first one that I'm going to mention is one that's called Seeing AI. And this one came out just in the last few years, and it's based on artificial intelligence. That's what the AI is, part of the Seeing AI of the name. And it's a free app that was actually developed from Microsoft. And the person who developed it is legally blind himself. And it's based on optical character recognition. So that means that if you're holding it over top, reading material, a book, a newspaper, a page, it can identify it and read it back to the user. That's similar to what the Orcam device does. So this is what we call the OCR technology. It also does facial recognition as well, and it can give you other information in terms of the monetary unit, that if you're holding a $20 Canadian bill, it would tell you it's 20 Canadian dollars, as well as other information around you. Another app that I've been talking about for years is one that's called Be My Eyes. It's a free app, and currently they have 3.79 million volunteers who are able to assist over 221,000 registered partially sighted and blind individuals that cover over 150 countries and are able to help people in 180 different languages. And what Be My Eyes does, it allows the user to use their smartphone camera or their tablet camera. And when they're on the app, they'll link up to a volunteer who's ready and willing to help someone who's visually impaired or blind to see what might be around them. So it could be that you're wanting to see the expiration date on a milk carton and you're not able to identify that. So you can actually have the camera focused on the expiration date, and that person could tell you what's the expiration. It could be that they're helping you navigate if there's a construction zone where it is happening in your neighborhood and you just want to be safe as you're walking. You'd have the camera facing outward, and that person could actually tell you what's in front of you. And it's a free app, as I said, and there's lots of volunteers who are just waiting to use and to be of assistance to someone. Various identifying apps that are out there that are free. One is Tap Tap See. Another one is Identify, and AI Poly. So all of these allow you to use the camera, and it's actually designed with the artificial intelligence to hold it over top of what you're holding, and it would actually identify what might be in front of you in terms of that object.
It's Albert.
And various ones can be in. Oh, hi, Albert. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too that, yeah, if it's okay.
Absolutely.
There's also another one very similar to Seeing AI called Envision AI, but it's a paid app, so it's not free. You have to subscribe or purchase it, but it does much the same stuff.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'm actually writing my list so I can include and add it for later. So that's wonderful. Thank you so much. So yeah, there's all these great apps. The Identify app, the IDENTIFI app, it's free, and it was actually developed by a Toronto teenager, and the CNIB was actively involved with the testing of this app. So I love seeing these new apps that are being created, especially from younger individuals that are making difference for people with vision impairments and blindness. Another one that follows suit in the optical character recognition or scanning apps. One is called the Voice Dream Reader Scanning app. Another one is the KNFB Reader. And some of these have free trial versions, but then to actually be able to access more, you'd actually have to do a paid subscription to the app. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they're usually about $10 or so, but you'd have to look into that. Learning Alley is one that actually provides 70,000 audio books for students. So for those between kindergarten to grade 12, and as well as college level textbooks. And the individual can download and play it back on their Apple device. A membership is required, but this is a great resource for individuals who are students and want to have the audio access to various books and textbooks. Other audiobook apps is Audible Access. So it's like audible.com, but it's actually one that's been designed for the visually impaired and blind to have more accessibility features. There's another one that's called Simply Audio, another one that's Audiobook. And there's one that I found that's called LibroVox. So LibroVox. It's actually volunteers, human volunteers who are actually speaking and reading the books back, as opposed to sometimes the computerized voices that some people might have difficulty with, and they prefer hearing an actual human voice instead. When we talk about navigation apps, one that's been around for a long time is called Blind Square. And right now I just have a photograph of Tiana Knight. She's a parapan athlete, and she's actually walking with her white cane, and she's using Blind Square. So it gives her the information of things around her. So it's based on a GPS type app that non-visually impaired and sighted people are more familiar with what's called Foursquare. So this is Blind Square that was designed for those who are visually impaired and blind. Another one that I was just actually recently informed about is one that's called Mapinhood. So Albert, I don't know if you know much about Mapinhood, but Mapinhood was designed by two individuals from Toronto, and these two individuals have come up with other aids for visually impaired and blind. So some of you who are listening might be aware of something called BuzzClip. So it was the same developers of BuzzClip who have created this free app, and it's a pedestrian navigation system or app. And one thing that they've actually done, especially with what's happening right now with the COVID pandemic, is they actually included a social distancing mode. So it's a safety feature. So it gives a user an idea of less busy areas to be walking, so they can actually do more physical distancing. So instead of doing maybe what would be the most common route that a GPS system would give you, pick up the amount of people that are in that area, so have you avoid areas that might be more populated with bigger crowds. And it has instant data, so it gives you information of an area based on crime, like conditions, if there's been an accident, construction hazards. It'll even tell you if the walkway is sloping, tells you where food carts are. So it's a really interesting app, and I think it's great what they've been able to do with this app. So this is one that I definitely wanted to let people know, especially with the pandemic, if you're concerned about safety or avoiding crowds. Mapinhood is a great free app that you might want to consider downloading and trying out. Soundscape is another app by Microsoft. It's free, and it gives you 3D audio cues to give you a better understanding of your surrounding area. So, for example, if you're walking and you're passing a coffee shop, and that coffee shop happens to be to the left, it would announce the coffee shop name, but it would actually do it out of the left earpiece. So this works well if someone has good hearing, because it's all based on the audio cues. So they use the slogan, seeing the world through sound. Another one is Aira. So Aira is an augmented reality smart glass that's combined with the trained professionals. So at the beginning, I told you about Be My Eyes. So it's similar to Be My Eyes, but instead of it being volunteers who are willing to help someone who's visually impaired and blind, they've actually trained individuals to actually be able to let people know what's around them, help them, and they actually profile you. So some people like a lot of detailed information, and that would be part of your profile. So when that person, the professional, is giving you the description of what might be around you or the information you're requesting, they might go into more detail. Now other people, they just want to know the facts right away, and they don't want to know all the extra stuff. That would be part of the profile as well. So they would keep it very concise, right to the point, based on what that individual might prefer in terms of getting that information. WeWalk there's an app that's attached to the WeWalk. It's a revolutionary white cane, so it gives auditory feedback as well, and with GPS information that could be tagged to the person's smartphone. There are various Braille apps that are available. I've only touched on 4 of them here, and Albert, by all means, might be able to kind of give more information on some of these, but the ones that I actually included here, one is called the Braille Pad. It's free and allows the user to write using Braille code. There's mBraille, which is also a free app, and it provides a user with a mobile Braille keyboard. So again, they can type and edit any kind of tweets and text messages using contracted or uncontracted English Braille. Braille Pro, there's a fee for it, but it's a tutorial for self-paced Braille instruction. So this might be very useful for someone who's just learning Braille, or it could be even a family member or a caregiver who wants to learn Braille to be able to assist their loved one. And so here's a tutorial app that it's self-paced and it gives you information that way. Another tutorial app is called Braille Tutor, and this one is free, and again has different lessons and that allow you to practice, and it's available on the iOS device. But as I said, there's so many more that are out there that it might be worthwhile to Google and check out. And I'm a big fan of finding out what people have to say about these various apps. So if you're looking for something, Google it and see. I would put in the tagline, you know, is it Braille that you're looking for? It might be a color ID app, and so color ID app for someone visually impaired, and see what pops up. Here's another one, AMI app, and this one is free. So AMI TV and AMI audio has some great programming, and so you can access this on a PC. You can also access normally programming on your TV if you have cable or satellite, but you also have the app that they came up with probably within the last year. So you can actually access any of your favorite programs whenever you need to. And if I'm not mistaken, and Morgan will probably confirm afterwards, you can actually access any of these webinars, these educational series will be actually posted on the AMI app. So if you wanted to share it with a loved one, or if you wanted to listen to this, this webinar or any of the other FBC webinars, you have access to all that information on the AMI app. Other entertainment or light app, there is King's Corner, which has quick 5-minute games. There's a nominal fee of 99 cents for it. iBlink Radio, Step Tracker. So if you want a pedometer and it's able to tell you the information and give you that kind of support, that's a free app. GarageBand, for those music fans, this is a very popular one. SoundHound, this one, I've been meaning to download it for a while. It allows you to find out the song title or artist name. I'm one of the worst people at remembering what a song title might be or who might sing it. I usually ask my husband, give me the initial of the first letter of their name and the initial of their last letter, and then I try to guess. But SoundHound is one quick way that you have a quick in access, and it'll let you know who might be the singer or what the song might be. Audiobooks, as mentioned, is also another free app that's available. Gaming app. So gaming is a big area when it comes for people who are visually impaired and blind as well. And so some of them have actually been designed to be more accessible. And I remember coming up with this information a few years ago for another presentation, that they found that, and I think this was back in about 2015 or 2016 when I did another app-based conference lecture. And at the time, 7% of individuals who were playing the various gaming apps, they found that 7% of them were using voiceover. So they found that there were all these people who were visually impaired or blind who were trying to access some of the games. And back then they found that there was very few that were actually accessible fully. And now there have been some that have been completely designed for people who are visually impaired and blind. And one I'm going to mention is a Blind Legend. It's a free app. So I don't know if Albert is a gamer, and maybe he'll let us know after I'm done my talk if he's been using any of these various games. But there's Blind Legend. Another one is Choice of the Dragon. Star Traders. All of these are free. There's another one that's called Silver Sword, Papa Sangre, and Dark Room, and these each have a nominal fee to download these apps. Additional everyday apps, one is Office Lens by Google that some people have found have been really useful to be able to get those audible information of things around you. Big Digital Clock, just as the name gives you, it allows you to have a big clock that shows up on your smartphone or your tablet. So if you do have some sight but you need it bigger, that's actually something that's available for you. Color ID, it helps identify colors. There's a light detector, so it allows a light to be sensed by hearing. So it gives you sound feedback. LookTell is a money reader that's specifically to identify currency. Talking tags allow you to link items to an audible tag marker, so you can scan it over top or take an image of it, and it'll actually read back whatever it was actually tagged to that item. Talking calculator. So especially for students, this could be very useful. Netflix actually has a lot of compatible accessibility features that are available in terms of voiceover and talkback that some people may not be aware of, and you have to look into it. I know there's a recent article that was just posted in the last week about this. There's also subtitle fonts that you can close captioning as well, and that's all done in the settings in your profile for Netflix. And this isn't an app, but a lot of my patients actually find it's very helpful to have things like the Google Home or Alexa, the Amazon Echo, Siri, of course, on the iPhone, where you can actually use these voice-activated assistants to help you. So this is great in terms of you can ask Google, hello, tell me the time, or what's the weather today, or, right now, unfortunately, we're not having any sports happening, but last year I was using it when I was watching the kind of keeping suit with the Raptors as they were in the championship part of the series, asking what the score was while I was doing something else. So it's a great way to keep in touch, where it's not an app, but it is something based on technology that has made a world of difference, and it wasn't originally designed for the visually impaired and blind. This is a favorite resource page that I often tell my patients about. So one is appleviz.com. So if you're looking for various apps that might work on an Apple phone, this is a great place. It has a forum, so it tells you information that other people, other users might have questions and answer or troubleshooting. There's also app advice, so it helps you filter through the various apps and give you the relevant information. Another one that I actually just found in accessibility.com, and it has a list of various apps and tutorials for the visually impaired and blind. Another one that I want to mention is ihabilitation.com, so the letter I and then HABILITATION.com. This was designed by one of my good friends that I've known for a year, Tom Decker, and he reviews some various apps. There's also some tutorials that are available there, and it's based here in Canada. So that's one that I want to highlight as well. Here's one for parents if you have school ages, for various apps as well. One is called Wonder Baby, so WONDERBABY.org is a website. It's funded by the Perkins School for the Blind, and this can give you a lot of great information. Another one is called Little Bears See, and this one also has various blog posts and gives you information that might be valuable for parents as well that you might want to look into. So this is something that it's at Little, LITTLE, Bears, so BEARSEES.org. So the big thing that I wanted to conclude with this is know that help is available. You're not alone if you are visually impaired or blind. There's a lot of great resources, and this is where I'm going to have Albert speak, because himself, he actually is a user. He's lived with blindness for quite some time, and so it's always great to get the insight for someone who is actually a user and give you the feedback and let you know about various resources that are available throughout Canada, that if you're not aware, this could be a great place to start. And it's always worthwhile to even reaching out to someone who might be visually impaired and blind. If you find that you feel like you're alone or isolated, know that you're not. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Albert.
All right, thank you so very much. That was a very good list, and as you said, 500,000 apps are available for use by screen reader users. So there's no way in God's green earth that we can get to all of them. Certainly, though, a few of the key ones that I use that didn't get to your list are like the GPS app, for example, Nearby Explorer Online, which is now a free app, and it's a spectacular GPS navigation app for iPhones. I think it's also available for Android phones and tablets. The Easy Reader reading app that connects with the direct-to-player service that Sela puts out is another very, very good one as well. So no, that was a great list, and boy, there's so much more. I know for the Apple side, everyone, if you go to appleviz.com, you will see a huge number of evaluations of apps for their usability and their accessibility. So don't hesitate to, if there's something you want to do. For example, we had a meeting this weekend talking about password managers and how do we keep our passwords safe, and how do we remember them all. And so I just went to Apple Viz, and in their search field, I just typed in password manager, and it came up with a nice long list of accessible and usable password managers. So Apple Viz, great resource, lots of blog topics and podcasts and evaluations. So, and I know that I apologize, I didn't go capture this name because I'm not an Android user, but Android also has a similar kind of repository website. So I'll have to get that to Morgan so that she can put it in the notes. But for Android users, there's also a website there where you can go and sort of look in on all of the accessible products that may be available for that side of the equation. In terms of resources, well, let's go back a little bit. I think in the early days, 30 years ago, when I first came to work in the blindness field, when I went to work for the CNIB, the question back then always was, oh, so you've lost your sight or you're losing your sight. How big is your backpack? It seemed like the number of devices and gadgets that we had to carry around to make our interaction in the world a little bit more usable, it would seem like we had to have a backpack full of gear that we took with us. And today, we're carrying all of this stuff in a phone, in an iPhone that fits in our pocket. Some of you are using iPads and Android tablets. Well, those don't fit so well in a pocket, but the iPhone, just about everything I do, from audiobook to scanning to an accessible contacts list. My calendar is in my phone. I have the WordPress app in there for the blog site that I work with. I have 3 or 4 different screen readers, and just everything we need now seems to be able to be put into that iPhone. I think somebody once said, it doesn't matter what you're talking about, there's an app for that, and that certainly is true. And I think too, the other issue that we might want to consider when looking at all of this technology, try not to get yourself locked into a corner that says only I just need one web browser and that's going to serve all of my needs. I think we're at a place in technology today where if you have a few extra tools in your toolbox, you're going to find it a little bit easier to get along out there in the world. For example, the web browsers. The Safari browser is the primary one, and it has a lovely reader mode, so that if I'm reading an article, a newspaper article, I can strip out all of the header info and all the advertisements and just get the text of the article. Well, that works brilliantly 90% of the time, and then every now and again you'll come across an article or a website where Safari doesn't work quite as well with it, but the Edge browser does, and its reader mode also gives you the capacity to strip out all of that other junk and get you just to the text of the article. So, don't get yourself locked into a corner where you're going to have one app and it's going to serve all your needs. Calendar apps. I have one called VO Calendar, which is specifically built for those of us who use VoiceOver. Great little app if you want to just have a quick look at what today's appointments look like or what the whole week's appointments look like. So it's a great overview app that lays over the native calendar app that lives in your iPhone. So VO Calendar is a great little app. Fantastical is another great calendar app. So I have more tools in my toolbox than just one of every kind. I use 3 or 4 different audiobook reading strategies. I use audible.ca or audible.com, as Dr. Anna has mentioned. Easy Reader for CELA direct-to-player books. And I also love Voice Dream Reader as a means of accessing all manner of audio material and PDF and so on. So training, let's talk about where you can get the support. all of this stuff, and in the 30 years I've been at this, I've learned it all because I've been in the room with a bunch of other blind and vision impaired folks. And I can't stress that enough. The peer mentoring, the things we can learn from each other and the things we can teach each other and the ways that we can support each other is spectacular. It's magical. It's the best way to learn. So seek every opportunity to get into the room with a group of other folks, especially if they're going to be talking about technology. We've got great GTT, the Get Together with Technology program across the country. We have meetings here and there that meet face-to-face when we're not locked down under COVID. And more recently, we've decided to go Zoom as well. And so we have meetings on Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific. And we talk about all manner of technology. And so we learn from each other, we teach each other, and we support each other in the trials and tribulations of trying to figure out all of this technology. So go check out the gttprogram.blog site, by all means. We've got lots of resources there. You know, Jerry Chevalier, somebody who's known to Foundation or to the Fighting Blindness Canada, Jerry does a weekly keyboard tips. So windows from the keyboard tips are posted every Wednesday morning. And so if you're trying to learn how to use your computer with the keyboard and without the mouse and without sight, Jerry's tips are spectacular. Of course, other training things, and I guess at CCB, the Get Together with Technology program, there's 3 of us. There's Kim Kilpatrick, David Green, and myself currently. And we also have a group of volunteers like Jerry Chevalier and Ryan Fleury and Brian Bibeau and Corey Stuvey. We have a whole list of volunteers who are also there to pitch in and help out. So do get involved with a peer group. That's your best way to learn. Of course, for paid support, Canadian Assistive Technology is a reseller of assistive tech, and they also provide training for the material they sell, but they also can provide on an hourly rate any training that you might need around assistive tech. Balance for Blind Adults in Toronto provides, when they're not locked down with COVID, they provide one-on-one training as well in their facilities and beyond. So check out Balance for Blind Adults. Now the CNIB Foundation and the Vision Rehab Canada, get yourself registered with those 2 organizations because they do daily living skills at Vision Rehab Canada, and they do a lot of technology training with the CNIB Foundation. So those 2 organizations are worthy of your taking a peek at their services. VIRN, V-I-R-N, Visually Impaired Resource Network out of Manitoba and Saskatchewan. They're centered in Winnipeg. They also do some Zoom meetings. They do some one-on-one stuff when they're allowed to. And they provide a great deal of support over the phone and in person. And Dr. Anna has already mentioned AMI. So AMI Double Talk TV and audio. That's a great resource for technology training and support. So look in on AMI. Their app is very accessible and usable. Humanware, they record a lot of webinars and that sort of thing. So that's a Canadian company, and go look at their website and see what they offer for training resources. One of the newsletters where I get an awful lot of really interesting information is material pulled together by an American fellow by the name of Dean Martineau, and it's the Top Tech Tidbits. Matter of fact, it's Thursday's Top Tech Tidbits, and that's been around for many years. It's very concise, very small little snippets, and then a link to go and learn more. So it's a fabulous newsletter. Go get yourself signed up with Thursday's Top Tech Tidbits, and you'll receive a newsletter in your inbox every Thursday. And it's amazing how many great resources those guys list. And they do list some Canadian resources from time to time, but it is certainly primarily American. Hadley Institute for the Blind, great resource for learning anything, iOS, PC. They have great podcasts, great little MP3 files there on YouTube. They do monthly webinars on crafting, woodworking, technology, just you name it, they have a webinar for it. So Hadley Institute, great resource. They're all free as well. And then there's, of course, there's a group of individuals, and so I will put together a bit of a list. I'll get it to Morgan and she can circulate it. This is in no way an exhaustive list. It is a beginning of a list, but honestly, the best thing you can do is to get involved with a group of other blind or vision impaired folks. Ask your questions. There are no dumb questions. So always ask your questions. And even if you know quite a bit about technology, join a meeting anyway, because if you, by not attending one, you might be robbing somebody else of a great nugget that you could provide. So get involved, get engaged. It's peer support and peer mentoring is by far the best way for any of us to learn. And we'll be learning from people who have walked the walk and have done the thing. They've sorted it out, or they're still trying to. So I think that's most of what I wanted to say, and we'll throw it open for questions before we run out of time here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Albert. That was great. So let's jump right in. I'm sure there's questions. I know there's a few that have popped up already. So again, at the bottom, you have your Q&A box. Feel free to type in any questions there. There's also the opportunity to ask questions over audio. So there are some keyboard shortcuts for that. So you can ask a question on a PC by pressing Alt-Y. And on a Mac, you press Option Y. So that'll alert me that you've raised your hand, and then I can call on you. But first, let's just start. I had a question that came in over email from Susan. And so Susan says, I'm a part-time student, and I have challenges reading materials that are in electronic format. I use my screen reader on my iPhone, but I find it frustrating as it will only read one page at a time and doesn't always start nicely at the next page. Is there a good app that I could use here? Often these documents are a PDF. I don't want to buy software before knowing how well it works. I find it especially challenging when pronunciation is incorrect.
Oh, good luck with pronunciation with synthetic speech. Voice Dream Reader is my go-to app. You know, the whole Voice Dream suite, which includes Voice Dream Writer, Voice Dream Reader, and Voice Dream Scanner. And that somebody just purchased it last week, and they told me it cost them $29 for the entire suite. That's one of the best ones for reading PDF files. Now, I have also had some success just using the onboard iOS Books app and the Kindle app as well. They read, but like you said, they're a little clunky going from page to page and so on. But Voice Dream Reader certainly is a spectacular way to read almost anything.
Yeah, that's the same input I've received from patients as well, Albert. It used to be KNFB Reader until the Voice Dream Reader really came to the level that it's at right now. So that's been the go-to for quite a few of my patients now.
And one of the other shortcomings too that we're finding with a great many of these, there's still nobody who gives us the ability to, say, read a Visa or bank statement. Whenever it's columnized, everything is defaulted to decolumnization, like you would with a magazine, where you'll read the left column, then the column on the right, and move over from column to column. Well, when you read a bank statement, you want to be able to read across columns, and none of these scanning apps, unfortunately, have mastered that little tidbit yet. So there's still some room for movement in the future.
Yeah, part of that, Albert, my understanding, it's actually the algorithm that they teach it, so it will know how to do like newspaper column reading, because that's often what people want to be able to see to read. So I think based on that algorithm, that's where some of the limitation, that it goes, like you said, column goes from top to bottom, then goes to the next one over. With newer technology and with artificial intelligence, we're going to see more in this area, and with that being said, Orcam, the one that's the intuitive camera system, what they've just been they're about to release is where you can actually give it voice activated commands. So if you had that Visa statement and you specifically wanted it to start reading at a certain point, you'd be able to audibly tell it to start reading at. Or if you only wanted a document and have it find just the phone numbers and read out the phone numbers, you'd be able to say, tell me the phone numbers. And based on that command, it would actually just then scan the document and give you that information of the phone numbers. So I'm not sure if that's been incorporated in some of the apps that are already available, but I know that technology is bringing out this kind of advancement.
Things that, what we have today has no comparison to what we had 5 years ago, and I think 5 years from now we will not even recognize what we're dealing with today.
I'm just impressed that in 13 years ago, we didn't even have a smartphone that we were all tethered to. Yeah. And now look at many of us.
And my backpack is much, much smaller today.
Well, and that's a nice thing. You don't have to have that big computer and everything, and you can have that mini Braille keyboard attached to your iPhone. So it's really impressive.
And for those of you who are learning Braille, the Braille input is very accessible for both iOS and Android now, where you're just Braille inputting right onto the screen. Don't even have an extra attachment. Just turn your phone sideways and start using your 6 dots.
Yeah, very impressive, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question from the Q&A from Sharon. Sharon asks, what do you think about the Bose sunglasses?
I think everybody looks really cool wearing them. I haven't had the pleasure of trying those out. It's a lot of money, and I just haven't found the use case for it in my life anyway.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I can't give you any input on that one either, Sharon, because I haven't had any patients comment if they've been using it. And typically when I actually endorse something or make comments, it's a lot of my patients will give me their feedback, because I'm always wanting to know, well, how is the end user finding this new technology or these new apps or these new devices?
And there's certainly, I mean, some of the feedback I get from my colleague, like Kim Kilpatrick has a set, and I think our volunteer Brian Bibeau also. I think the common theme I tend to hear is that it's a pretty small unit and the battery life is a bit of an issue. That doesn't last all that long. So that may be one of the limitations, but apparently they sound brilliant, and my God, you look good wearing them.
Yeah, and that's a big thing with when you're using any kind of Bluetooth tethered device or accessory. A big thing has always been battery life gets to drain a lot quicker. So, but I do see that there's different devices that they've been improving that, because that's often the biggest complaint that a user might have, is that it drains the battery so quickly, and that's because it's being tethered off of a Bluetooth system. And
one of the things too, Anna, is the because even our phones, if you're doing a lot of navigating, GPS and all the rest of it while you're out and about all day, it can be a bit tough for a battery to last all day just in your phone. And so I think an awful lot of us today are carrying a battery pack. So
yeah,
I've got one that's
absolutely.
called the Pocket. I've got one that's called the Pocket Juice. It'll give my iPhone 4 full charges, and it's a quick charge. So if I've got 10 minutes somewhere along the way riding a bus and I plug it in, I will really zap that battery back up by quite a lot. So battery packs are almost becoming a necessity if you are a heavy duty user with navigation and all the rest of the things we do on our iPhones.
And actually, with that being said, Albert, I never commented about some of the different apps that are available for people living in bigger cities with public transit. And there are definitely apps here in Toronto. I think one is called Rocket Man, and they also have one with TTC where they use a GPS that's attached to the buses or their the streetcars, giving you a little bit of an idea of when something might be arriving. It's not perfectly accurate all the time, but it does give you a pretty good idea, which is always nice if it's starting to rain and you're wondering, do you want to be standing outside at a bus shelter for 10 extra minutes, or do you want to leave maybe in a few more minutes, so that way you'll just catch the bus or the streetcar just in time.
And that's a good point. And there's one of the apps that's out there is called just Transit. A lot of the authorities send their material to that. There's also Move It, and Move It is married up with Nearby Explorer Online, the free GPS app. And one of the things I've loved about it in my own community, I can just be walking down the road and it's identifying streets as I approach them. It also identifies bus stops and tells me when the next northbound 88 is going to come by. So it gives me a time. So
yeah,
Move It here in I live in a little community, Parksville on Vancouver Island, and Move It works really well with our transit system and with Nearby Explorer Online.
Oh, that's great.
Great. I have another question from the Q&A from, actually, I see there's a question from Sherry. She said, what is the app to help? Sorry, I missed it. Sherry, if you could give us a little more detail in the questions about which app you were looking for more information, we'll try to answer that. But Douglas asks for Albert and Anna, can you speculate as to the reasoning behind the reluctance to promote Android products, i.e. Cell phones, Chromebooks, tablets, for the blind and partially sighted?
Ooh, you go ahead with that, Anna. I'm scared of that one.
Yeah, you know what? I think one of the reasons I've known quite a few patients who might have used both platforms, and it seems to be a personal preference. And so if someone started off with an Android, they may actually like the Android, but I know of a lot of people who really went towards the Apple products, and I think it was part of the fact that they had a lot of great support with the Apple products. If someone is using an Apple iPhone or a iPad, one thing that I tell my patients here in Toronto is if you contact your Apple store, they can arrange for you to have tutorial lessons done in store. Now, possibly now they've actually moved over to webinars based on what happened with COVID, but you can actually get tutorials in different levels. Some are actually, you get so many free, but then if you want to have it more in depth, you can actually pay to have more sessions. And it's a great way for somebody to have better knowledge of how to maximize the use of their Apple products. And I always say, make sure that you let them know that you want to know, work with somebody who is well-versed with the accessibility features for visually impaired and blind individuals. Each store I know in the GTA or in the Toronto area has at least one person who is visually impaired or blind working in their store. But they also have other people who are trained in that area. You know, I'm not sure why it has always been that you get more information. Even when I do my research on the various apps, I often find a lot more resources out there talking to Apple users compared to Android users. Now, usually if there's an app that's available on an Apple device, there is a similar app that's available on an Android.
And one of the shortcomings is that Seeing AI is only
It's
on
not,
Apple.
right?
It's not on Android. And
Yeah,
you know,
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, but most of the apps do have a partner over on the other side. But my own personal position on iOS versus Android is the consistency. If you'll notice how many Android phones there are out there, there's LG and Samsung and Motorola, and every one of those manufacturers sort of puts in a different iteration of the Android app, or the Google Android app. And so what you're finding from device to device, and it could be, you could have two Samsung devices that are 5 years apart in age, and they'll operate, of course, different versions of the Android app. So I think some of that inconsistency can tend to knock people off the rails on there, whereas an iPhone 10 is an iPhone 10 is an iPhone 10, and it's the only one that's going to operate the Apple in the Apple Ether environment. So I think there's some of that consistency. You can count on every Apple phone that you pick up, every Apple 6 is going to be able to do exactly the same thing. It's not necessarily the case in Android. That doesn't mean that Android isn't accessible. Of course it is. It's just that the learning curve may be a little different. I think the number of resources in the blind community, the number of us using it, there's a lot fewer Android users, so that it's a little more difficult to find the peer support that you might need. From my perspective, anyway, that's how I understand the world to be, and I'm happy to be wrong about that.
Okay, why don't we try to take a question from the call, like the over audio. So I have Fauzia has raised her hand. So I have unmuted you. On your end, Fauzia, you may have to press to unmute. I think it's Alt-A on Windows or Shift-Command-A on a Mac. So let's see if we can get this to work. We did get it to work last time. Maybe we'll give her a sec. While we do that, there was a couple questions just about, Albert, if you could repeat the name of the website for Jerry's tips and the name of the reading app that you suggested.
The reading app, I think the one I suggested was Dolphin Easy Reader, Easy Reader being all one word, Dolphin Easy Reader. It's the one connected with the CELA/CNIB library service for direct-to-player books. Jerry's tips, his Windows from the Keyboard tips is a category on our blog site. It's the gttprogram.blog. So if you go to that website and click on the category called Windows from the Keyboard tips, Jerry has been posting these every Wednesday since October. So there's a great many, even though the page will only list the most recent 10, there's a button at the bottom where you can expand that and get to the next group of 10. So there's lots of great tips there that Jerry's provided.
Another resource that I want to mention, if you don't mind, is one that often it's a YouTube channel that I go on to. It's called The Blind Life. And Sam on The Blind Life really does a great review of lots of different vision aids, devices, apps, anything new. So Albert, are you familiar with The Blind Life as well?
No, that one I have not been to, although
Okay,
there's so many, aren't there?
Very insightful, and it's a YouTube channel that he has, and he always has some great tips. And he's really good to say what may work for one person may not work for another person, because when we talk about people with vision loss and blindness, there are so many different variations. So if you find something might not work for you, chances are there's something else out there. So don't give up. There's definitely more options. So worthwhile checking out different resources and finding the thing that may work for you.
Absolutely. And there's another one, I didn't mention it earlier, but there's a website and a gal that we follow, and I have learned a lot from her textbooks. Her name is Kathy Ann Murtha, and her website is blind.training. And she sells a whole bunch of really great textbooks. She does a Friday afternoon. It's 2 p.m. Pacific every Friday. I think this series is going on into August. And she does a quick little half-hour tutorial on keyboard tips and different ways to access your computer using just the keyboard. And then she sells all kinds of training as well.
That's great. I think we have Fauzia now. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So my question is about the app Soundscape. I just recently downloaded it, but I'm kind of confused. I think it can work better if I know how to work it better. So it says to set up a beacon, so I don't get how to start working with it.
I think you simply turn it on and start walking, and it will tell you about your environment.
Yeah.
So
what does that mean? Set up a beacon? I don't know. Is that a destination where I want to go? Do I do that, or what does that mean?
That's how I understand it. If you want to know where the hardware store is in your town, you can go to that hardware store, and while you're standing in front of it, you can set the beacon. That way, the next time you walk past it, it will alert you to the fact that you're walking past. You could do that with your mailbox. So that's how I understand it to work. But generally, though, you have to it works best if you have stereo headphones. And so, because it's going to tell you, if it says that you're approaching a four-way intersection, it will tell you that Hearst Avenue goes off to the right, and Pym Street goes out in front, and Hearst Avenue. And it tells you that information from those locations. I'm afraid of the dark, so I can't use this app at night, because all of a sudden I've got somebody talking to me from just over my right shoulder. They just scare the bejesus out of me, so I can't do it. Too afraid of the dark to use Soundscape at night.
No.
Oh, I think we lost.
I think it faded out.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I know that the Microsoft stores, there are only a few of them across the country, but they do offer some training as well with Soundscape. And obviously, if you've gone to the store, I can't remember exactly where. I know there's a couple here in Ontario and Toronto. I think there is one in, I want to say there's one in Montreal, and there's one in BC or Alberta. I'm not sure. But right now, because of the situation, I know a lot of their training has gone online. So no matter where you are in the country, you may be able to contact them and get some more information. So I would suggest
Okay.
suggest that as well.
And
Okay,
also,
thank you so
somebody asked about the Bose frames earlier, and the Bose frames is one of those good tools to use with something like Soundscape, because Soundscape does require, or it relies on stereo feed of the sound. So at least with the Bose frames, there's nothing in your ear. The sound is coming from the arms of the glasses right in front of your ear. So you can still hear the environmental sounds around you and still get the feedback from Soundscape. Other headphones that are good to use with something like Soundscape would be the bone conducting headphones, so that again, your ears aren't, you don't have an earbud in your ear or a headphone on, but you're getting the sound through the bone right in front of your ear.
And for any of our listeners who are in the Toronto area, one thing that you might want to be aware of is that there's been some great beacon technology that's been put around Toronto and various places through the CNIB. They've been working on this project for the last, I think, about 3 years or so. So if you're familiar with the Yonge and St. Clair corridor in downtown Toronto, this few block radius is considered the most accessible area of all of Canada, because they've actually incorporated what's called the beacon technology. And my understanding is a few months ago, they were also able to get the beacon technology put into Pearson Airport. Now, right now, we're not flying very much, but when we're back to flying, so if you are living in Toronto, you might want to look up or contact the CNIB to give you the information about more about the beacon technology and which app is affiliated with that technology. And it will give you the auditory information. It will give you descriptions of areas that you might be walking into. So if you're at Yonge and St. Clair and you're walking into a building, it would give you an idea that you're transitioning from a carpeted floor to a more smoother floor. So it describes your surroundings based on how it's been programmed with the beacon technology. So something to be aware of. And I know that they're trying to get into more places throughout Toronto.
And I think the train station in Ottawa is also equipped with similar technology. The other thing too that this raises, Anna, you had talked about IRA, which is paid staff agents who, using the camera on your iPhone, can be your sighted guide. And in Toronto's Pearson Airport, in Winnipeg's airport, and in YVR in Vancouver, those airports are IRA-free zones. So even if you're not a paid IRA subscriber, you can download the app, and as soon as you get to the airport, you can call up a live agent to walk you through your process, and it'll cost you nothing because the airport is actually funding that part of the service.
That's right. And I think they've even made some other areas as well. So one of the things IRA was trying to do is have more accessible areas, and hopefully the cost would not be the part that's stopping someone from being able to access it. So they were looking at ways to actually increase their ability to have more users access this wonderful service.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So I'm mindful of time. We're just a little bit over 4 o'clock. I think we'll do one more question. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Great. So I have Barbara who had put her hand up, and I have given you the talking stick, so to speak. So you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Again, Windows Alt A, Mac Shift Command A. We'll give a second to try and let Barbara do that. Just a comment that we had in the chat, which I thought was really interesting, is Virginia shared that, we were talking a little bit about video game and gaming apps. And she said the newest Last of Us game for PlayStation will have all kinds of accessibility built in, including voiceover. It's pretty cool to see a big mainstream console game support accessibility like that. I agree. Pretty neat.
For sure.
All right. I don't know what's happening with Barbara here. Barbara, are you there?
While we're waiting for Barbara, I'll just mention, because I didn't mention anything about games. I don't tend to use my phone as a gaming tool, but I love Cribbage Pro. That's the one game that I do play against the computer. I'm not very good. I think I'm on a 4-game losing streak right now. But my partner and I also play Cribbage Pro online. We sit in the same room, of course, and she plays it on her iPad and I play it on my iPhone. And because the game is accessible, I can play against her and I don't have to worry about her cheating, because she used to do all the pegging and I just never trusted that, But anyway, so the Cribbage Pro app is really good on iPhone and iPad and so on.
Well, I don't know what happened with Barbara, but Barbara, if you're out there and you have a question, please do email me and we will try to get an answer for you. And as Anna and Albert both said, we will send you a list of resources, or should give you a link to where you can find these resources after today's webinar, because I know it's hard to get all the names down while you're trying to listen as well. Okay, is there anything you want to close with before I just do our last little housekeeping bits?
I realized in my last slide here, it's a picture of my 4 kids, and I usually have my email address, and I see it's not on my slide. So if somebody did have a question that they wanted to share with me, by all means, you can send it to info@drlowvision.com. So info@drlowvision.com.
Perfect.
And my email address is just albert.gtt@ccbnational.net, or you can always reach us by calling the national office in Ottawa and asking for Albert. They'll put you through by phone or by email.